Oh boy, guess who's late making a video? Holy shit. I would like to apologize to my audience because I got caught up with the End in the Death Volume 1 video, which was supposed to be around 15 to 25 minutes, and is now an hour and a half. I am so sorry. I guess that's how I know I'm a real YouTuber now, because I have let down my audience. So, making this video, I guess more than anything, is a stopgap and praying to God the algorithm doesn't let my channel die. I'm going to be covering the Arks of Omen tarot cards, which is something I should have done a long time ago. In this video, though, I want to cover the tarot cards that have been released and already had their meanings revealed by way of the books that have been released already, and present my theories for what's going to be happening in the upcoming book, Farsight, based on the tarot cards and the general vibe of what we know now from everything we've seen in the previous 3 Arks of Omen books. Now, there's a really good chance that you're familiar with what happens in those 3 books and you just want to hear about my predictions for Farsight. If so, skip to the time here. If not, let's get right into it. But first, to preface, in my previous videos, I would try and glean what was going to happen in the Arks of Omen books by equating the tarot cards in the trailers to actual tarot cards in real life. Now that we actually have a lot of lore and information about everything that goes on in the first 3 Arks of Omen books, Abaddon, Angron, and Vashtor, which are all very exciting, I can say with certainty, I was absolutely wrong. My way of thinking was that the God Emperor was going to die. Honestly, I don't know why I let myself think that. That was a little bit ridiculous on my end. And now that we have more information, these tarot cards do make a lot more sense, and I can see I was basically going nowhere and spinning my wheels. So unfortunately, I think I'm gonna have to abandon doing that for this video, even though I did think it was pretty fun. Another reason for this is because some of the equations I had in the past now prove to not really be that accurate. For example, the 3rd card in the trailers, the Hulk, I believed to be the Tower, the tarot card resulting in catastrophic change or avoidance of cataclysm when played in reverse. But later on, we would get the Lightning Tower, which shows an actual stone tower with a figure falling from it, which is a near one-to-one recreation of what is actually depicted on the Tower tarot card. What we know now about the tarot trailers is that for every book that gets released, there's about 4 corresponding tarot cards. The first 4 being the Galaxy, the Despoiler, the Hulk, and the Silver Key, which cover mainly the basis of everything that's going on in the lore in Abaddon Book 1. The Galaxy card setting the stage for where everything's going to be, the Galaxy obviously, the Despoiler showing that yes, the first book is about Abaddon, the Hulk explaining the titular Arks of Omen, these large space Hulks that have been retrofitted by Vashtor into essentially being fortress vessels in and unto themselves, which is very interesting, and are at the heads of these things called Bale fleets, which I guess could essentially be considered the answer to the Imperium's Indominus fleets that Gilliman has put out, so they can essentially meet each other one-to-one, which I think is really cool. And the Silver Key, which deals with the main quest of Abaddon and Vashtor the Archifane, the demonic entity who Abaddon has struck a deal with, because Abaddon is trying to further his own goals, and Vashtor is trying to become a 5th true Chaos God. Malal doesn't really count all that much, I'm sorry Malal fans. Well, to the Malal fan, I think there's only like one of you tops. But basically, Vashtor and Abaddon are looking for these pieces of something that will create a Silver Key. They don't need all of them, but Vashtor believes if they get enough of them, he can sort of work his magic and make a proper key. What this key will do is unlock essentially a very powerful device or weapon that will let Vashtor ascend and will let Abaddon further his war against the Imperium. So that's what they're doing with their Arks of Omen, going to places around the galaxy in order to find the fragments in what is essentially a galactic fetch quest. And by this point, the Eldar and elements of the Imperium like the Inquisition have realized these are not just random attacks where they're going, they must be looking for something. So the Imperium knows Abaddon is up to something with these Arks of Omen attacks, but they don't exactly know what just yet. Now, in Book 2, Angron, the 4 corresponding tarot cards are the Hound, which is what the Demon Primarch Angron has been referred to ever since the Siege of Terra, the Great Host, which refers to the largest World Eater army ever assembled since the Horus Heresy, being used to siege a planet called Malakbile, which supposedly had an Arks of Omen shard in the center of it, but was really attacked by Angron and his fleet because an Inquisitor had fashioned with ancient archaeotech a powerful psychic beacon that effectively served as a mini Astronomicon. There's a few of these scattered about the Imperium Nihilus, and it's sort of helping keep the Imperium alive. Now, this device caused Angron an immense amount of pain due to its psychic nature, so he sent his fleet to destroy it. And when he did destroy it, he struck it with such force that Khorne himself got up out of his seat and brought his own sword down along with Angron sort of in the warp, destroying the device and breaking the planet apart, which perfectly leads into the third tarot card of the Angron book called The Shattered World. Because yes, the planet itself literally cracked open from the force of his sword blow, and Angron was immediately killed in the aftermath, but he rematerialized immediately, having only gotten a second of peace in that instant of death. Furthermore, the power of this blow and the influence of Khorne created something called the Murder Curse, which effectively washed out as a wave of Khornate energy that infected the entire Indominus fleet Quartus. Now, keep in mind, there are 20 Indominus fleets, and this entire fleet was lost to Khorne. Every Space Marine, Primaris Marine, Guardsman, Voidsman, Sister of Battle, everyone, aside from the Custodes, the Sisters of Silence, and the Grey Knights, were immediately turned to Khorne and just went insane. And any of the few people who weren't are not going to survive very long. A full 5% of the Imperium's fighting capability has been turned. That's huge, which leads into the God Emperor Inversed, which just talks about the end of the Imperium. This card doesn't deal with anything specific like the Shattered World did, but it's a general vibe that, oh shit, things are bad. The God Emperor's power has been turned on its head, and if this keeps up, the Imperium will absolutely die. Now, Book 3 is called Vashtor, and Vashtor needs an artifact that is at the center of the Rock of all things. So he infiltrates a station set up by the Inquisition specifically to covertly spy on the Dark Angels in the Rock, by making a deal with an ancient AI that was at the center of the station. So eventually, he is able to infiltrate the Rock, along with his followers, some Black Legion, and a lot of Iron Warriors. I myself had actually predicted in this earlier video that Vashtor was going to be able to get along with and make alliances with the Iron Warriors due to a lot of their shared elements of creation, demon engines, that sort of thing, and I appear to have been right in that regard. That's something I'm happy about. Now, at this time, the Ultramarines had been fighting against a force of Marines that were believed to be the Fallen, so the Rock actually materialized in orbit over the planet they were fighting on. And that's when Vashtor made his move. So he started fighting the Dark Angels both inside and outside the Rock, the Dark Angels doing the best to defend the Rock, with the Ultramarines on side as best as they could be. Now, Vashtor would actually be thwarted by Azariel, now fully crossed the Rubicon and as a Primaris, which is pretty badass in my opinion. Not because it's Primaris, but because it's Azariel. Now, while that did slow him down, it isn't what fully stopped him. What stopped him was the intervention of Be'lakor, the other demon prince who we know has been a rival of Vashtor ever since we learned about Vashtor. Be'lakor basically saying, no, screw you, you're not gonna get ahead of me in the great game, sit down, kid, forcing Vashtor to quit the field and leave some of his followers and Iron Warriors behind, who were then rounded up and to be tortured by the Dark Angels. It's actually here we can begin to see the breakings of relations between Vashtor and Abaddon, if only just a little bit. The cracks are starting to form, because Vashtor was furious that Be'lakor intervened and got mad at Abaddon saying, hey, Be'lakor's supposed to be pledged to you, he's on your side, why did this happen? But you know, chaos is very fickle, as it always is. Vashtor, though, for his part, realizes this is also an opportunity to make things still work out in the right way, because those tortured allies of his are going to reveal where he and Abaddon are hiding, and the Dark Angels are going to have to pursue in the Rock, meaning they will bring the artifact to him, so he's gearing up and getting ready for that. This plays perfectly into the 4 tarot cards for Vashtor's book. The Demon, which talks about a demon bleeding into reality, Vashtor's invasion of the Rock. Astartes, which deals with the Dark Angel defenders, who, though bloodied, are unbowed and determined to protect their home. The Lightning Tower, which deals with the invasion of the Rock itself, the Rock being the Lightning Tower in the card. And the Demon Inversed, which deals with Be'lakor's intervention. In fact, the trailer for the Demon Inversed talks about how chaos is ever fickle, and depicts two demons stabbing each other. Very on the nose, though not something I would have predicted. Again, further proof that I was totally wrong. And this leads us all very nicely into the 4 tarot cards that correspond to Book 4, titled Farsight. Now, the first tarot card leading up to this book is called the Horde, and what it shows is a hand reaching up towards Farsight's Dawnblade, drowning in a sea of red rats, and the narration behind it says, "A horde descends, scarlet and crimson souls, blood-maddened, blood-drunk, flooding the galaxy." To my mind, this means that those victims of the murder curse, Fleet Quartus, are going to be wandering the galaxy and eventually slam into the Farsight enclaves. They are going to have to fight off these insane humans, and I think Farsight is gonna realize this is not the normal Imperial army. I have faced them before, I know them inside out, this is completely different, what the hell is going on? This realization will lead us into tarot card number 2, the Young Warrior, which shows a young warrior holding Farsight's blade with a horse, standing at a crossroads. This is gonna be a pretty metaphorical crossroad, but an obvious one. Now that he's realized this, he is going to have to make some kind of decision. How do we deal with this threat? We can no longer sit in our enclave and stay on the backbenches of galactic affairs slowly expanding. Everything going on is now very clearly our problem. This will line up with the narration of the video, which states, "And a light gutters in the endless black. It may scourge the red tide, or it may drown beneath its waves." This will show Tau civilization, at a crossroads deciding which way to go. Side with the ethereals who are going to be more conservative, or Farsight who has more awareness. He's going to really start to take charge of more and more of his race. And in the face of this crisis, we get towards the 3rd card in the set, called the Fool, inversed, which comes with the narration, "Yet here, a change in spirit, from fury to serenity. I cannot say, I cannot see." This to me means that somehow the murder curse will be undone and Fleet Quartus will be freed. Something is gonna happen. I'm not sure how it'll happen. Either Farsight directly will have something to do with it, or maybe it'll be the power of the Emperor, something. Now there's really no telling what'll happen to Fleet Quartus after that. Will it just kill them when it goes? Because they certainly won't be able to go back to the Imperium. Are they going to join the Tau Empire? I very highly doubt that, because they've tried to get Space Marines to join before, it hasn't worked. But the fact is, the Tau, and namely Farsight enclaves, will no longer be able to ignore the influence of chaos, and Farsight is going to have to seek answers. Which leads us into card number 4, the Tree of Life, which shows the character depicting Farsight, a warrior holding Farsight's Dawnblade, kneeling at a red tree on a red background with orange and blue stars twinkling in it. From this, we get the narration, "But hope blooms in the garden of lost souls and burning stars." To my mind, Farsight is gonna need to seek answers and will have to venture into some kind of warp storm or the warp itself, fighting demons along the way, facing things he's never properly fought before, facing God knows what, in order to try to find answers. How does the Tau Empire cope with this? How does he and his people cope with this? What do they do? And it will be the dawn of a new age in terms of Tau understanding, because we've slowly seen them starting to wake up to the realizations of the galaxy and just the reality of how things truly are. Could we possibly see the return of the nascent Tau god of the greater good that we saw in the Secret Wars book, where a Tau ship was lost in the warp after it tried to translate, and was saved by an entity with multiple limbs and blue skin, an embodiment of the greater good brought on by the more psychically active member races within the Tau Empire, namely the humans. Personally, I don't think so, even though I kind of hope so, because it's too cool of a concept for GW to actually use. They just sort of let things like that fall by the wayside after mentioning it in one book. Also, a quick addendum. Yesterday, we got some information regarding the beginnings of the story of Arks of Omen Farsight, which states that Farsight is preparing to finally win the War of Daka against the Orcs, which is probably why we got a new Snickrot model along with the new Farsight one. It's at this time the Ark of Omen, known as the Unhallowed, translates into the system, instigating a vicious three-way battle. Could we possibly see a Tau-Orc team-up? Maybe. Though, with all of this being said, I do believe my theory still holds weight, and we will see the return of the corrupted Fleet Quartus as the instigator of the events proper. Though I will address one thing. It's been a common theory at this point that Farsight will have something to do with the resurrection of the lion. I kind of don't think so. Just based on what the cards are telling me here, it doesn't really seem to correlate all that much. It feels like the Farsight storyline will be more self-contained, and will probably deal with the emergence of something akin to Tau Psychers, or some sort of Tau ability to harness the warp or engage with the warp in some way so they can combat this new demonic threat they're engaging with. Now, the 4 final cards are the Lost Child, the Star, the Knight, and the Galaxy Inversed. I have my own theories about that, but I don't want to say anything until after we know the lore of the Farsight book, because again, I have a habit of being wrong so far in this regard. But I do believe that will be the book that deals with the resurrection of the lion, though again, I will not go into the specifics of how that will happen, even though I do have a very minute theory about how that would work, and what would be involved in Lion's resurrection. But until then, here we are. The last Arks of Omen card has been released with the Galaxy Inversed, and now we're just waiting for the final books to come out and for the return of Lion, because let's be honest, we know it's gonna happen. And then after this, I believe, will probably be the dawn of 10th edition, where we can expect a lot of really awesome things. Hopefully GW doesn't drop the ball. Let's wait and see, and I will see you in the next video.